题都这么难，你就不要挑战它。
6:00. Let's get started. How many of you have I taught before? Put up your hands if you've taught a lot of, probably about half the class. A few of you I haven't spoken to before, so for the purposes of those who I haven't spoken to before, I'm going to just walk you through some of my basic classroom management rules, and I want to give you some basic information about this course and the particular way you need to approach it. This is somewhat different than some courses, and as a result of that, it's pretty easy to fall into a trap of not approaching it properly, which will adversely impact your ability to do well in the course. I think it's really important you understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and if you get that, it does make it somewhat easier to understand. And most of the people that have put up their hand because I've taught them before, that's because I taught them management. Management is a very different course than this. Management has a couple of closed book exams. This course has a couple of open book exams, and they're very, very different. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and the expectations with respect to that. Because of that, you've got to recognize that you have to approach this course perhaps in a slightly different way than courses that are asking you to just retain and regurgitate information. Because it's an open book exam, I just don't do that, right? I'm not going to say, look up what's at page 437 of your textbook and write it down in here, because that's not really showing that you understand anything, right? So that's not what's going to happen here, and it's really important that you understand some basics. So I'm going to get you to take something down in your notes right to begin with. I'm going to write it up here, and I'd like you to put it down there as the very first thing in your notes. I want that written down, folks. And that's because when you share your notes with the moron who didn't show up for class tonight, I want them to see the fact that I specifically told you you should not miss class. And there's a reason for this. This is not something I say in most of my classes. But what happens is we take information every week and I give you a piece of a larger puzzle. And you cannot do anything with it until you have it all. And when you have it all, then we can work with it and you can go, aha. But if you're missing a piece, if you're missing a piece of the puzzle because you weren't here, that's 3 hours, you will never be able to put the puzzle together. Which means that you don't just miss that class, the rest of the classes will never completely make sense because you've got a big hole in your picture, okay? So I tell you this because I've been teaching this course for over 20 years, and I know how students fail. And the number one principal reason why students do not do well in this class is because they miss. And it's deadly. It's just deadly. There's too much information that gets missed, and it's a bunch of glue that's holding everything else together. So it doesn't really help you to have some of it if you don't have all of it. There are component pieces. You have to understand the whole in order to be able to do anything with it. That being said, I recognize that people are ill, people have issues. I do tell students that you are responsible for everything that occurs in this class, regardless of whether you're here or not. And it doesn't matter the reasons, right? Because my job is to come and teach this, your job is to learn it. If you're not here, I cannot teach individuals every part of this class. So I have to place that responsibility on you. In fairness to you though, one of the things that I do allow you to do, because it is so important that you have the material, that if you're not going to be here, you can send someone and have them record the lecture. I do allow that. I do allow me to be vocally recorded. I don't want to be video recorded because apparently I'm a big star on Snapchat. And I don't really want to be on someone's Snapchat feed because they say this is what I did in this particular class. So I do allow you to video record. The one thing you have to know about that though is any recording of me is owned by me, not you. They're mine. I will allow you to use them to review, to get prepared for and understand the material, but I have full control over what you do with that. And because we've got a young child in the class, I'm not going to swear, but if I happen to swear in class, you're not allowed to take it down and say, Murray said this in class, look at this, right? Because those are mine and I get to decide what happens to them. Any questions about that? So I should introduce myself. I'm Murray Kernahan. I will be teaching this class. I will be the sole instructor with respect to this. I teach both of the law classes, Law 1 and Law 2. You can call me Murray. I don't have a problem with that. This is the only email address that I use. I do not use the university email address at all. I haven't looked at it in over 10 years. I have no idea what's there. It's probably exploding with a bunch of you guys. How many of you have a university email? You get a lot of crap, don't you? A lot of useless stuff comes in there. I don't have time for that. So what I do is I basically ignore it and I use my own little email address. So it's very simple. It's just my initials, MFK, BRU. That's Brandon U. See how clever that was? And at gmail.com. It is the only email address that I use for all course materials that I have. Please do not send me an email telling me you won't be in class. I have no use for that. Because if you're not in class, what's the deal? You're responsible for it, right? And telling me that you won't be in class? Well, first of all, there's nothing I can do with it. And second of all, I won't know your name. So I don't even know who I got the email from, right? So somebody's telling me they won't be in class. Well, I wouldn't know if you're there or not there. I don't take attendance. You're responsible for the material, okay? And it is important that you come to class. So don't miss class. It's very important. And please don't say, oh, he probably says that to all his classes. This is the only one I say it to. And it's because of the nature of this particular material and the way that it gets evaluated. Second thing I want to tell you, please do not use a cell phone in this room. It distracts me. I have a lot of things churning in my head, and I'm trying to keep it so that it makes sense to you. And what happens is that when people use cell phones, it disrupts my thought process. But I keep talking, and then what happens is I say a bunch of crap that makes no sense, and then you write it down as if it makes sense, and then you put it on the exam, and I said, that makes no sense, and you fail. So if you want to fail, use a cell phone in the room, okay? And it'll probably drive everybody else crazy. Please don't do it. It bothers me. You're welcome to leave at any point in time and use your phone if you need to, but I don't really like to see them in the class, okay? So put your phone away. Turn it off, right, if you need to. And if you do really need to go out and call, check your Facebook and your Instagram account, you can do that, okay? But you do have a problem. I don't check my Instagram account. And I'm big. All right, so I will tend to shut the door. You can arrive late. I would rather you arrive late than miss class. It's too important. Even if you're going to be an hour late, please don't go, oh, well, I don't want to look like a ninny coming in an hour late. Come in late if you have to come in late. It's better to come here for a third or two-thirds of the class than to miss the whole thing. Because that piece might be enough for you to put the puzzle together. So please don't be afraid to arrive late. Just come in quietly. So this course is a law course, and there are issues with respect to this. You must not lose sight of what I view my job to be, because it impacts on what you're going to do, okay? So this is a law course in business. And what I'm going to do primarily is try to teach you how to deal properly with the law. That's an important point. There's a how here. There's not a what. There's not a do you know this. There's a how. I am going to primarily teach you a process. And you should probably write that down, folks, because later on, if you forget that, it's really easy to go off stream. You are learning how to do something. And if at the end of the course you don't know how, the fact that you know what is going to be fairly useless. There will be a how. I will teach you how to do things. And what I'm trying to do primarily is have you understand how the law works in business with a viewpoint to allowing you to analyze risk. The focus of the course is that so that you can understand things well enough that when you get out in the real world, you will have this sort of a spider sense that's going to tell you, hey, you know what? There's a problem here. I think there's an issue. You may not know exactly what to do, but you will at least know maybe there's a problem here. And maybe you should take some steps. The most common step you've got to take often is call a lawyer. And I am not here to teach you to be a legal lawyer. I'm teaching you how to use law in business and how you can end up in trouble. Okay? So when you're in trouble, you have to take the next step. But understanding what can get you in trouble can prevent you from having to take that step. And I'm going to teach you how to analyze risk in a very, very small area. And this is the other thing that you have to understand about this course. The law is basically rules. And there are a lot of rules. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rules that we would call law. Do you think I'm going to teach you them all? If we were to fill every surface of this room with rules, and probably even using microfiche, the tiny little words that we could write it as small as possible. If we were to fill this entire room with the rules that exist, that could impact on you, I'm probably going to teach you about that much. You're not going to learn a lot. We're not going to cover a lot. And the reason why is it's too big. We will be full. We will not probably leave this classroom much before 9 o'clock every night that we're here. Okay? It's a full class. There's a lot of material. Yeah, not. Okay? Law 2, I leave a little early, so that sometimes happens. But even with teaching this small amount, we're going to be full. Because there's a lot in there. It's very dense. And I will say, I think this is the important bit, right? I'm not just picking an odd chunk of law and saying, let's just teach this stuff. This stuff will make sense to you for the most part. But I am going to teach you a small amount. And this raises the other issue that you can never lose sight of. You're not learning it all. You're only learning a tiny little bit. And if you ever thought that because you understood this little bit, you can deal with situations fully and properly, you're wrong. And it also creates another problem. The problem is that there's something out here. And some of you might know stuff that I don't teach. That information is off limits. You're not to go outside of this class to gather information because I can't mark you on this. I can only mark you on something that we have boundaries around. All of the material in this class is going to be covered by us in this class. And if you remember what an evaluation is, it's not how right are you. It's how well can you show you've understood the material that I've taught in this course. But in order to be able to evaluate you, we have to have boundaries that you got to learn this stuff. And the fact that your uncle had this issue and you know all about it, don't put that on the exam. It's wrong. And if you watched Law and Order last night and you figure, oh, this will really work well on the test, don't do that, okay? If it's not material learned in this course, it's not relevant to being assessed. So you've got to stay with what I teach. And we're going to pretend that it's everything. Because that's the only way in which you and I both have the same boundaries. So when you're evaluated, right? So I'm going to evaluate you on the stuff that I teach you in this course. Because I'm teaching you a process, textbooks don't teach process very well. They give you information. And I have had many students tell me they don't get the textbook in this course, and they can still do fine. I don't use the textbook for assignments, for reading, for going over material, for any purpose whatsoever. There is a textbook. It can be useful, but not very. So, does any of you know that you're also going to be taking Law 2? How many of you are going to be taking Law 2? If you're going to be taking Law 2, the textbook is more useful in Law 2 than it is in this course. So if you're saying, should I get it? It's the same book, right? You can use it. As long as I'm teaching it, it's going to be the Smythe and Soberman. I think it's the 14th edition. I don't remember what it's called because I don't use it. But it's a fairly advanced textbook. There are 3 different books that are used in law courses in post-secondary education. There's a guy named Yates, and his is pretty rinky-dink basic level. It's not much better than grade 12 level. It's not particularly sophisticated. And then there's a McGinnis textbook that I've used. It's sort of in the middle. And then there's this Smythe and Soberman, and it's pretty technical. It's got a lot of information in it. The problem with it is that if you don't, particularly if you don't come to class, you don't know what the weight is. Like he talks about stuff in great detail, and if you don't know, is that important or not important? It can be difficult to negotiate your way through. In Law 2, we deal with more specific areas, and the textbook is much more relevant. It'll help you understand things, usually with a greater degree of consistency. So I'm basically telling you there is a textbook in this course. I'm not ever going to say to you, you don't need it, but I am going to leave it to you to decide whether you want to get it or not, and I will not be using it. Your use of it will be to review the material, if you wanted to, that you've covered, to see whether or not looking at the textbook, in a slightly different way, allows you to understand it better. I doubt it will. Okay. I'm being honest with you. Okay. So if you're not sure about it, you want to talk to me about that further, let me know. Okay. But I do have, I would say probably most of the students who took this last term did not get the textbook, and if they did, they told me they never read it. Maybe some of them should have, but most, you can do well without the textbook, I can say that, okay? That being said, because I am picking this material, your textbook will sometimes have different material, or it will emphasize things in a different way, or it will be based on Ontario law. I teach Manitoba law. Sometimes there's an inconsistency. Often it's emphasis. I want to emphasize this, textbook doesn't, or the textbook goes too far, farther than I want to, I'm simplifying it. If there's a conflict between what I've said in class and the textbook, what I say in class trumps the textbook. You're to always use what I say in class as your first and most important source of getting information. There will be 2 exams in this class. There will be a midterm and a final. The course topics are basically going to be the legal system, which we're going to start tonight. This is some stuff about what law is, how it works a little bit, give you some information about some things. I will tell you that from my experience in teaching, much of what I'm going to tell you, I would say probably over half, you don't know yet. People think they understand the legal system. You don't know this stuff yet, okay? And I'm going to have you understand things in a certain way. So don't think that this is going to be, something that, you're an adult, you've seen the legal system, you understand it. It's a lot of stuff that people don't understand or don't understand the right way. Okay. And the second thing that we're going to deal with is we're going to deal with these things that are called torts. Torts are things that you sue for that aren't contracts. You're familiar with some of the torts. I'm going to teach you a lot more about them. We're going to deal with 7 torts in this class, and then I'm going to show you how to work them. Okay? There are thousands of torts. We deal with 7. Okay? Then you're going to write the midterm. This will be in approximately sometime in October. I will give you a course outline next week, if I remember. I got to figure it all out. I always forget when your breaks are, so I always schedule things and have to redo it. And I'll try and get that all sorted out. When's your spring break?
18 to 22
Feb. Okay. Now we may have it before then.
The week of the real.
18. Okay. All right. So you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to write a midterm. This midterm is going to be with 45% of your mark. And then the last part of this course is going to be entirely based on contracts. And then you're going to write an exam on contracts that's worth 55% of your mark. I need to tell you this again. This exam will be on this material. It will not be on this material. The final exam is on contracts. Saying it a different way, if you answer a question on the final exam that was taught to you only here, your answer is wrong. Because this is not being tested there. Got it? So, once you finish this, you're basically done. Please don't throw out your notes as you're leaving the class after the exam. It hurts my feelings, okay? Take them out. You know, I think that they're more valuable than that. And people, I find this pile in the recycling bin of all my hard-fought information that I've given to these students, and it's just recycled, okay? So yeah, put it in the recycling bin at home. I'll never know. Do you have any questions about anything at all? I will tell you that, generally speaking, I tell students there are 2 things that you need to do well. Number 1, ask questions. And number 2, don't sit at the back. That being said, some people do quite well at the back. I actually believe that it is physically harder to learn at the back of the room. There's too much stuff in between. I think that, right? You and me, we're talking here, right? No distractions, right?
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to be engaged because you're here. And you need to be engaged. Because if you're not engaged, if you're not actually trying to learn this material and understand it and forcing yourself, if you're distracted, it's harder to learn. Just telling you. So maybe we'll fix that next class. Any questions about anything at all? This is a really good time to ask questions. What have I not covered that you need to know about?
Due dates. Well, not due dates, but the midterm and final exam. But you said you'll have that sometime next week?
I will. I'll have it for class next week. The final exam is set. I don't set that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right?
So the midterm.
So the midterm, my guess is it's going to be right before. Then I have time to mark. That's my guess. He said 18, but I don't know. I don't like having big gaps of time between things but I do have a schedule and I know what it is. There's a certain amount of time I have to get you to that point. About 1/3 of the information you will get from coming to class. That's it, 1/3. If you just show up in class and take notes, you're nowhere near being there. To get the next 1/3, you actually have to spend time working with the material. You got to work with it. You got to do something with it. You got to go through it every week. You got to spend time with it. You got to question, understand what it is and why it is that way, and what was that talked about, and what was that little point that Murray made. You got to get it, okay? And that takes time at home. And about 1/3 of it is going to come when we do some case studies at the end, which we can't do now because you need all the pieces. Okay? You need to have all the pieces to put things together. How many of you have not written an open book exam before? Put up your hand if you haven't, okay? How many of you have written an open book exam? Very few, a couple of you, okay? So, let me explain something that I hope will make the issue evident, okay? Because there are people that cannot really separate the closed book exam that they're used to writing with an open book exam, and therefore they prepare the same way for both of them. And you can't. Sorry, it's getting warm in here. I'm going to take the sweater on. Okay? They can't. You can't do that. You must learn and understand the material every time. Every time class is over, you got to spend time with it. And the reason for that is it's going to get complicated. It won't be as complicated if you're just taking it in a piece at a time and working your way through it, and then working away something else and knowing it and winning it. And I have some students who try and pack it in at the end. You cannot cram for an open book exam. There's nothing to cram for. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me that hopefully will make this clear. It has to do with a course I took in first aid. How many of you have taken a first aid course? Okay, how many? Put up your hands. You can. Okay, lots of you take a first aid course. Okay, and did you have a test at the end of it? How many of you had a test? How many of you got your certification without having a test? Because I don't want you working on me. Okay, though I want the people who were tested to. If I fall down here, make sure that someone who actually had a test is helping me out. Okay, because so most people you have to write this little test. What was the test like? Anybody remember what their test was like in first aid? No one? Okay, how many of you had a test? What was it like?
So long ago that I don't
Can't remember? You can't work on me either. All right? What was it like? Did you have one?
It was both written and practical. The practical covered all the major aspects.
What did practical mean?
Actual hands-on, working on a person or a dummy.
Oh.
Or both if you want to interchange the two.
Okay. You can work on me. I've well-practiced dummy. All right. So I remember when I was in this first aid course, right? And we got that manual. You ever seen the first aid manual? It's like about this thick, right? And here's what they did. And I remember this. These are events that I won't forget. Is that I had to do this test. And it was very practical. You basically they had actors who were going to simulate a situation. So I walk in the room, ready to deal with the situation, and there's a person lying unconscious on the floor. And that's it. What do you do, folks? What treatment do you give that person? How? Are they choking? Is there poison gas? And as soon as you walk in that room, you're going to fail, right? Is there poison gas? Have they had a heart attack? Are they in a diabetic coma? Has someone stabbed them and they're bleeding in the back and you can't see it? Do you know what to do in a situation like that? Can you possibly know what to do? And even if you have the first aid manual in your hand, is that going to help you? Not a bit. And this is what students think. They think, if I have the first aid manual in my hand, how is it possible to not deal with the situation? You can't understand what to do if you don't know what the question is. If you don't know what you're dealing with, the fact that you have it, it's somewhere in there, will not help you. And you've got to remember that. You don't have to memorize it. You have to understand. Now, I'm going to be better at than saying, dead person, right? Or they're soon to be dead person. I give you enough information, but it's still really difficult if you don't get it. If you don't understand it, and you can't learn in the exam. I often tell students, if you've got to open your textbook in the exam, for those of you who have it, you're in trouble. Right? You have to know it going in. And when you know it, you'll be able to see it right away. It's easy when you know it, and impossible if you don't. Right? So that's something to keep in mind in terms of preparation. I would like you to do well. You're able to do well. There's nothing preventing people from doing well in this course. But I do suggest very strongly that when I give you advice about how to succeed, that you try to do that. Because if you don't, now you're taking some chances. And that generally doesn't work particularly well. All right. Anytime something's going through your head, you know, if you have any like questions or even thoughts or even things that are not clear, yell them out. You can interrupt me at any time. Okay? And it's important that you do. Because I'll ramble along thinking you've understood it, and if we go past, then you won't. So if you have any issues or things, yell them out. I will sometimes stop like now and say, anything that you want to talk about right now? Any questions that you have? Have I missed anything that you need to know? Go ahead.
Do you have slides that we can
No.
make notes and check it out later?
That's okay. There's one of the reasons one of my colleagues talks about this is how he'll talk and talk and talk away, and he'll put a slide up, and the student will look, see the slide, pull out their phone, take a picture, and then go back to doing nothing. Right? It drives people crazy. You need to learn how to take notes, and everything I say is important. Okay? Yeah, we're not going to play. Anyway, so no, I don't. But I do write things on the board every now and again. Okay? And then I go home and spend the next 2 days coughing up chalk dust. Seriously, folks. Okay? So, any questions? Can I erase my email address here? It's going to be on the course outline too. I only put it there because some of you might want to be sending me something in the next week, and I want to put it there. You guys all got this? Can I erase this? We will tend to take a break at about the halfway point of the class, which is around 7:30. For about 10 minutes. Okay, I want you to imagine a little map here, and the map is meant to disclose where Brandon University is. How many of you drove getting here? How many of you drove? Okay. So I want you to imagine that you're traveling westbound down this street, which is, does anybody know which one this is? No, this is 18.
Victoria.
This would be Victoria, okay? So you're traveling down Victoria, and you decide you want to go, is this 19th Street? Is that the next one? Can't tell if there's, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or no, maybe that 19th Street's the one that gets cut off. Let's call it 20th. I think 19th Street is here, right? I think this is 20th. No, because we're on Victoria. I don't think that 19th makes it because of that thing. So let's just call it 20th, okay? So you're traveling up down from this direction, and you're going to make a right-hand turn onto 20th Street from Victoria. Can you picture this, folks? So, we're going to combine these two lanes. We're going to call this A, and this is B. This is the other side, okay? Do you understand A and B? So, here's my question. If you're going to be making a right-hand turn off of Victoria onto 20th Street, will you be in A, which is actually 2 lanes, or B? A right-hand turn heading west. You turn off of A or off of B? This isn't hard.
A.
Okay? Now the question is, why do you go on A and not B?
Safety.
I heard an answer, it was safety. Okay. Any other reasons? There's a law. All right. So I have any other reasons?
The way you should have been taught.
Okay. Let's taught that.
It's the most efficient flow of traffic.
Is it the most efficient? What if there's a lot of traffic? Let me just change the facts a little bit, okay? Let's say that there's quite a bit of traffic. Everyone's coming in here, it's early in the morning, and whoo, there's no one over here. Will you go around here and zip in there like that? Okay, that's my question, why not? So, the answers so far are safety, law, taught. Anything else? What's preventing you from doing this?
Oncoming traffic.
Pardon me?
Oncoming traffic.
What if there wasn't any?
There could be cars in lane A that are literally getting in your way.
What if you were really quick like a bunny and could get across that without having to worry about that? In fact, there's some slow moving. There's an old man with a hat, okay? And he's driving down the middle of the road. Do you ever go around there like that and go like that?
No.
Why not?
Law.
What?
The law.
The rules.
Why don't you break the law?
This is the consequence.
We don't want to go to jail.
All right? This is a different reason. I'm going to put it down. All right? So, what I would like to ask you now is a slightly different question. How many of you ever drove on the Trans-Canada Highway before the speed increase? Remember, it used to be 100, and then they upped it to 110. How many of you, put up your hands please, I just need to have a visual of how many people I'm talking to. How many of you have driven on the Trans-Canada Highway before the speed increase? Okay. How many of you have driven on a highway that had a 100-kilometer-an-hour speed limit? That's really my question. How many of you have done that? I get more. That's better, okay? And here's my question. How many of you have exceeded the speed limit when you were going on 100? Put up your hands. Please, loud and proud if you've done it. If you've done it, okay. So that's pretty much everybody. Am I right? That is driven. Okay, so are you breaking the speed limit on the Trans-Canada or the highway you're thinking of because it's safer? Is that why? Is it safer to go in excess of the speed limit than to keep within the speed limit? Is it safer? Is the law say just go whatever speed you want, right? It's fine, right? Is that why?
Only Ontario.
Were you taught to just ignore the devices that tell you the speed limit? Those are for your discretion. Were you taught that, folks? What's the answer?
No.
No.
Oh, and can you get a ticket when you go? So I've just established that I have a class full of criminals, right, that are quite prepared to break the law. Am I right? So are laws optional? Let's pick and choose which ones we want. Is this the way the world works, folks? So I'm going to go back over here. Why would you not go this way when you would go in excess of the speed limit? Why? Why is one different?
You're more likely to get caught if there's more people
Just 2 police officers on duty in Brandon at a time, right? Come on, folks. If you knew you weren't going to get caught, would you do it? If there was an old man with a hat, you know, those are the worst drivers, right? No, the worst drivers are the guys with white sunglasses. They are, by far, the worst drivers on the road. But, aside from that, you got some old guy with a hat, would you zip out here and go around? If you knew that there was no police, and there was very little oncoming traffic, would you do it?
No.
Why not?
Because it's not something that you do all the time, whereas.
So you only break laws that you break all the time. Is that what you're saying? You're only going to break the laws if they're ones that you always break, right? Switch you to a slightly different question. How many of you, in the last 6 months, okay, have texted while you were driving? How many of you done it? That camera doesn't work, okay? So you don't have to worry about this. Be honest, put up your hand, we have to know. How many of you have done it? Okay? So that's about a third of the class. Do you still do it? How many of you have done it in the last week? Put up your hands. Okay? Oh, there's a few of you. Didn't the rules change?
Oh, yeah.
Did they change?
Big time.
Big time. I didn't know about this. I just found out about this today or yesterday. Big time, right? What's the rule now, folks?
You have a suspended license if you're caught the first time for 3 days.
Now, is it if you're convicted or if you're charged?
Like on the
They
spot.
caught you. On the spot, yeah.
What if the cops are wrong? What if you're innocent? You still lose it for... Holy... There are issues with that. And you still do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you because I would be picking on you. Why do people do this?
Like you said, there's only a couple of cops on duty at a time, and people can still get away with it.
But how many of you have seen someone who was obviously texting while they're driving? How many of you seen it? Is it pretty obvious? Yeah, usually it's when they go through the intersection with their head down and the light red, right? They're not paying attention. And that's frickin' dangerous. So do you think that you do it because it's safer to text while you drive? No. The law says it's okay. No, it's pretty hard. Their consequences are pretty extreme. So I'm trying to get you to identify the fact that you don't follow rules. And that your justification in my original example really is quite inconsistent with what you're telling me. So, to have you understand this better, I need to move to another driving example. And unfortunately, I'm very sad about this, but this example doesn't work anymore because the world changed. But you'll still be able to probably identify with this, okay? So what I would like to draw for you instead is the area that is known as the First Street Bridge. So this is the bridge that goes over what? Don't say the river. It's not right. What's it go over?
Rail yard.
It goes over the railway tracks. You guys know what we're talking about? So down over here is Pacific, right? And then the next, where the intersection is Rosser. Do you guys know what we're talking about here? What's the speed limit on the bridge?
50.
Where does it turn to 50?
If you're coming up onto the bridge,
So, right at the base of the bridge, right? But that's a big bridge, isn't it? And how many of you, when you get to the 50 sign, you don't actually slow down to 50? How many of you go past the 50 sign going faster than 50? How many of you do it? Put up your